If you look at Hollywood from the outside, it seems like a place made of gold and dreams. The sun always seems to be shining, the palm trees sway in the breeze, and every other car looks like a spaceship. But if you live there, or if you really know how the town works, you know the truth. It is a machine. A giant, loud, and hungry machine that runs on money, ego, and attention. In this world, people are treated like products. They are bought, sold, traded, and thrown away when they stop being useful. It is a place where being the loudest person in the room usually means you win, but then there is that one guy. You know him? Everyone knows him. He is the one person who seems to be walking through a completely different reality than the rest of them. While the city screams for attention, he whispers. While others build walls around themselves with security guards and black SUVs, he takes the subway. This is the story of the strangest anomaly in the history of the entertainment business. This is the story of a man who has everything, but acts like he has nothing. It was a regular Tuesday afternoon when the cameras caught him. There were no red carpets, no flashing lights from premiere events, and no screaming fans waiting for an autograph. It was just a normal day on the streets of New York City. A tourist happened to look up from their phone and see a familiar figure sitting on a small, green park bench. He wasn't wearing a disguise. He wasn't hiding his face. He was just sitting there, eating a plain sandwich. He looked a bit tired. His clothes were simple, maybe a little worn out. He looked like any other person taking a break from a hard day of work. The tourist snapped a picture. Within hours, that picture was everywhere. The internet went crazy. People commented by the millions. They didn't go crazy because he was doing something wild or illegal. They went crazy because of how normal it was. In a world where celebrities pay thousands of dollars just to have their lunch delivered to a private table, seeing a superstar eat a sandwich on a public bench felt like seeing a unicorn. It was shocking. You have to understand how rare this is. Usually, when someone reaches the level of fame that this man has, they change. The fame gets to their head. They start to believe that they are better than everyone else. They start to demand things. They want the biggest trailer. They want the best hotel suite. They want people to bow down to them just because they are in a movie. It is a natural human reaction to having everyone tell you that you are a god 24 hours a day. But it never happened to him. It never stuck. People who work on movie sets with him tell the same stories over and over. They say you can walk onto a set where the budget is hundreds of millions of dollars, filled with explosions and giant robots, and the biggest star there will be carrying his own equipment. He won't wait for an assistant to bring him a chair. If it is raining, he stands in the rain with the crew. If someone is struggling to lift something heavy, he is the first one to step in and help lift it. He doesn't do it for the cameras. He doesn't do it because his publicist told him it would look good. He does it because in his mind he is just another person doing a job. This behavior confuses the people in charge. The studio executives, the producers, and the agents don't know what to do with him. They operate on a rulebook that says stars are difficult. The rulebook says that stars are high maintenance. It creates a problem for them when a star refuses to play by those rules. There are stories of him taking massive pay cuts just so a movie could afford to hire another actor he liked. There are stories of him giving up his bonus money to the special effects team because they worked harder than he did. It sounds like a fairy tale. It sounds like something a scriptwriter would invent to make a hero look perfect. But the witnesses are real. The checks were cashed. It happened. The interesting thing is, he doesn't seem to think he is doing anything special. If you were to ask him about it, he would probably look confused. He treats the janitor with the exact same respect as the CEO. He doesn't look down on anyone. It isn't an act. It isn't a performance. It is just who he is. And that silence, that refusal to shout about his own goodness, makes him even louder in the eyes of the world. We are so used to being lied to. We are used to seeing celebrities on talk shows, laughing and telling stories that their publicists wrote for them. We are used to seeing them on social media, showing off their mansions and their cars, trying to make us feel jealous or trying to sell us something. We have developed a defense mechanism against it. We know it is fake. We know they are acting even when the camera isn't rolling. That is why this man is so different. When you look at him, you don't see the acting. You see someone who is tired of the games. You see someone who is comfortable just being human. It makes you wonder, though. How did he survive? Hollywood is famous for chewing people up and spitting them out. It takes young, hopeful actors and turns them into bitter, angry adults. It destroys marriages. It ruins friendships. The pressure is constant. The eyes of the world are always watching, waiting for you to make a mistake so they can laugh at you. Most people in that industry build walls to protect themselves. They become cold. They become hard, but he didn't become hard. If anything, the years have made him softer. He seems more connected to real life now than he did when he was younger. It is a mystery that baffles everyone. Usually when someone has nothing, they are humble. When they gain the world, they become arrogant. He has the world. He has the money. He has the fame. Yet he is still the guy giving up his seat on the subway. He is still the guy playing with his dog in the park. There is a specific viral video that floats around the internet often. It shows him on a plane. He wasn't in first class. He was in economy, squeezed into a small seat like everyone else. He didn't make a scene. He didn't ask for special treatment. When the flight attendant offered him water, he took it with a polite nod. Later, when the plane landed, he didn't push to get off first. He stood up and helped a lady lift her heavy bag down from the overhead compartment. Just a simple, nice gesture. But the internet exploded again. Why? Because we don't expect kindness from powerful people. We expect demands. We expect entitlement. This is the shocking part the title talks about. The industry is preparing for the next big thing. They are always looking for the next scandal, the next headline, the next way to shock the audience. They think shocking means more violence, more special effects, or more drama. They don't understand that the most shocking thing in the world right now is simple decency. In a city built on fake dreams, a real person is the strangest thing you can find. He walks through the streets, and people recognize him, but they often hesitate to approach him. Not because he looks scary, but because he looks peaceful. He doesn't have that "don't look at me" aura that so many stars have. He looks approachable. Sometimes people stop him. They ask for a photo. He always stops. He never brushes them off. He smiles that genuine, slightly sad smile, and he takes the picture. He asks them about their day. He listens to the answer. He is present. This story is not just about a famous actor. It is a mirror being held up to the rest of society. It makes us ask questions about ourselves. If we had his money, would we still ride the subway? If we had his power, would we still be kind to the people serving us coffee? Most of us like to think we would. But history shows that power changes people. It changes almost everyone. The machine keeps turning. New movies come out. New stars rise up. They get famous. They buy the big houses, and they lose touch with reality. It is a cycle that repeats over and over again. But this one man remains outside the cycle. He is a glitch in the system. A beautiful, confusing glitch that reminds the world that you don't have to play the game just because everyone else is so. As we dig deeper into his life, we have to look past the movies. We have to look past the action figures and the posters. We have to look at the man underneath the leather jacket and the sunglasses. Because the story of why he is this way is not a happy fairy tale. It isn't a story of a blessed life where everything went right. To understand how he became the kindest man in Hollywood, we have to look at the darkness. We have to understand that the kindness we see today was forged in fire. He didn't survive the machine by being lucky. He survived by losing almost everything that mattered to him. And that is where the real story begins. It is easy to be nice when life is easy. It is easy to smile when the sun is shining. But the true measure of a man is not how he acts when the cameras are rolling and the money is flowing. The true measure is how he acts when his heart is breaking. And as we will see, this man has carried a weight on his shoulders that would have crushed most of us a long time ago. When we left off, we were talking about the kindness this man shows to the world. We saw how he rides the subway, how he eats sandwiches on park benches, and how he treats every single person he meets with a level of respect that is almost unheard of in his line of work. It is beautiful to watch. It makes you feel warm inside. But if you stop and really think about it, it doesn't make sense. Usually people who have that much money and that much fame change. They get used to everyone saying yes to them. They get used to getting everything they want. So why is he different? Why is he so humble? The answer isn't found in the mansions he owns or the movies he makes. The answer is found in the things he lost. To understand the man you see today, you have to look at the fire he walked through. You have to understand that his kindness didn't just come out of nowhere. It was forged in pain. Deep, heavy, crushing pain. Years ago, before he was the legend he is now, he was just a young guy trying to figure life out. He had a best friend. They weren't just friends who hung out at parties. They were brothers. They understood each other in a way that only people who grew up fast in a crazy industry can. They talked about everything. They dreamed about the future. They were going to change the world together. But then, one dark night, the industry took his friend from him. The news hit like a sledgehammer. It was sudden, it was tragic, and it broke something inside of him. Imagine losing the one person who really knew you. The one person you could call at 3 a.m. to talk about your fears. Now imagine that happening while the whole world is watching. While he was grieving, he had to keep working. He had to put on a costume and pretend to be a hero on screen while he felt like a failure in real life. He didn't run to the tabloids to cry about it. He didn't write a tell-all book to make money off his friend's death. He just took the pain and he carried it. He carried it quietly, like a heavy stone in his pocket that he never showed anyone, but life wasn't done testing him. Not even close. The universe seemed to decide that if he was going to be a star, he was going to earn it through suffering. As he got older, he found love. He met a woman who made him believe in happiness again. They weren't just dating. They were building a life. They were going to have a baby. For the first time in a long time, he had hope. He had a family on the way. You could see it in his eyes during interviews back then. He looked lighter. The weight seemed to be lifting. Then the unthinkable happened. The baby was stillborn. To lose a child is a pain that most of us cannot even begin to imagine. It is a hole that never really closes. It changes you forever. Most people, most marriages, cannot survive something like that. The grief is just too big. It swallows everything. And for him, it did exactly that. He and his partner eventually separated, pulled apart by the massive tidal wave of sadness that had crashed over them. So now, he was a man who had lost his best friend and his child. He was walking through life with a broken heart. But the tragedy still wasn't over. A few years later, the mother of his child, the woman he had once planned to spend his life with, was killed in a car accident. She was gone too. Just like that. In the span of a few short years, he had lost the people who meant the most to him. Think about that for a moment. If you went through all of that, what would you do? How would you react? Many people would be angry. They would scream at the sky. They would blame God or the world or bad luck. They might turn to drugs or alcohol just to numb the pain because it hurts too much to feel it. In Hollywood, we see this story all the time. A tragedy happens and the star self-destructs. They get arrested. They get into fights. They become bitter and mean. They push everyone away because they are afraid of getting hurt again, but he didn't do that. He never became bitter. He never started treating people badly because his life was hard. In fact, it seemed to have the opposite effect. It was like the more he lost, the more he realized that the only thing that really matters is people. There is a famous internet meme from a few years ago. Someone took a picture of him sitting on a bench, looking very sad, eating a sandwich by himself. People put funny captions on it. They called him Sad Keanu. They laughed at how lonely he looked. But now, knowing what we know, that picture doesn't look funny anymore. It looks heartbreaking. That wasn't a meme. That was a man taking a moment to breathe while carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. He wasn't sad because he was lonely. He was sad because he missed the people he loved. And yet, Even in that sadness, he was peaceful. He wasn't hurting anyone. He wasn't making a scene. He was just existing. This is the steel backbone of his character. This is where his kindness comes from. He knows that life is short. He knows, better than anyone, that you can wake up tomorrow and the person you love most could be gone. So he doesn't have time for ego. He doesn't have time to be rude to a waiter or to yell at a driver who cuts him off. He understands that every interaction with another human being is precious. When you realize how fragile life is, the small stuff stops bothering you. Who cares if you get the best table at a restaurant? Who cares if you get the most credit in a movie? Those things are dust. The only thing that is real is how you make people feel through these tragedies he didn't hide away. He went back to work. But he worked differently. He threw himself into the physical action of making movies. He learned martial arts. He learned how to drive cars fast. He did his own stunts. Maybe the physical pain of training and hitting the mat was the only thing that quieted the mental pain. Maybe focusing so hard on not getting hurt in a fight scene was the only way. He could stop thinking about the hurt that was already inside him. He became the best at what he does. Not because he wanted to be famous, but because being the best gave him a place to put his energy. It gave him a purpose to get out of bed in the morning. When you watch him in those big action movies, you aren't just watching an actor hitting his marks. You are watching a man who is fighting. Even if the script is fake, the effort is real. The discipline is real. And through all of this, he never lost his humanity. You hear stories about him on set that are completely different from the horror stories you hear about other stars. He doesn't sit in his trailer playing video games while the crew stands in the rain. He is right there with them. If someone is having a bad day, he notices. Why? Because he knows what a bad day feels like. He knows what it feels like to want to give up. So he offers a kind word. He offers a hand. He tries to be the light for someone else because he has spent so much time in the dark. This is the part of the story that usually gets left out of the magazines. They want to talk about the new movie. They want to talk about who he is dating. They don't want to talk about the quiet strength it takes to survive what he survived. They don't want to talk about the fact that his niceness is actually a victory. It is a victory over sadness. It is a victory over the urge to be cruel. He could easily be the most bitter man in Hollywood. He has every excuse to be angry at the world. But he chose a different path. He chose to be gentle. He chose to be kind. And that choice is so much harder than being angry. Being angry is easy. Being closed off is easy. Opening your heart again after it has been shattered, that takes a kind of courage that most people never have to find. So, when you see him giving up his seat on the subway, or when you hear about him giving millions of dollars to the crew, remember this. Remember the price he paid to become that person? He isn't nice because he is naive. He isn't nice because he doesn't know how the world works. He is nice because he knows exactly how the world works. He knows that life can be unfair and painful. So he decided to be the one thing that the world gave him very little of. He decided to be good. This resilience. This ability to survive the darkest nights and still smile at the sun the next morning is what sets him apart. It is the foundation for the shocking business decisions he would make later in his career. When you have lost everything, you realize that money is just paper. You realize that the only real wealth you have is how you treat the people standing next to you. And as we will see, this realization would lead him to do things with his money and his career that would leave the rich and powerful of Hollywood absolutely confused. He didn't just survive the machine. He refused to let the machine turn him into a machine. And that perhaps is his greatest performance of all. When we talk about Hollywood, we are usually talking about money. It is the engine that runs the whole town. Every decision, from what movie gets made to who gets the lead role, almost always comes down to dollars and cents. The system is designed like a pyramid. At the very top, you have the big stars and the studio executives who make hundreds of millions of dollars. They live in bubbles of private jets and gated mansions. Down at the bottom, you have the crew. These are the people who build the sets, drive the trucks, paint the walls, and work long hours in the rain and the heat. They are the backbone of the industry, but they are usually treated like replaceable parts. In this world, the rule is simple: grab as much as you can. Agents and lawyers spend months fighting for every extra penny for their clients. They argue over contracts, they threaten to walk away if they don't get a bigger trailer, and they demand bonuses just for showing up on time. It is a ruthless game where kindness is seen as weakness. If you care about the crew, you aren't leverage. If you don't fight for yourself, you get eaten alive. That is the standard way of doing business, but our hero plays by a completely different rulebook. He doesn't play the game to win. He plays the game to make something beautiful. And nowhere was this more shocking than during the making of a certain sci-fi movie that changed cinema forever. You know the one? It had the slow-motion bullets and the green computer code. It was a massive risk. The studio didn't even know if it would make any money. They had a strict budget, and they were terrified of going over it during the negotiations for this movie. The producers were in a panic. They wanted to make the movie look incredible, but the special effects they needed were going to cost a fortune. They were looking at the numbers and realized they couldn't afford to pay the top-tier actors what they usually demanded while also paying for the effects team that was necessary to make the movie work. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place. That is when the actor did something that left the room completely silent. He saw that the movie needed more money for the creative team. He saw that the weavers of the dream, the people who design the costumes and create the digital worlds, were being undervalued. So he made a decision that goes against every instinct of human greed. He volunteered to take a massive pay cut. He didn't do it because he had to. He was the biggest star in the project. He could have demanded $10 million, and the studio probably would have found a way to pay it, maybe by firing some of the crew or cutting corners on the effects. But he knew that if he took less, that money could go to the people who actually make the magic happen. He basically said, I don't need to be rich to be happy. I need this movie to be great. By lowering his upfront salary, he allowed the production to hire the best visual effects artists and costume designers in the world. He invested in the art, not in his bank account. But the story doesn't end there. He also negotiated a deal called back-end points. This is a fancy term that means he wouldn't get paid extra until the movie started making a profit. He took the risk. If the movie flopped, he would lose millions. He bet on himself and he bet on the team. Well, we all know what happened next. The movie was a massive worldwide hit. It broke box office records. It became a cultural phenomenon. The sequels were greenlit immediately. Suddenly, those back-end points were worth a fortune. He was set to make an unimaginable amount of money, tens of millions of dollars, just from the profits of the first film alone. He had every right to keep it. He earned it. He took the risk when no one else would, but once again, he shocked everyone. When the big checks started rolling in, he didn't go out and buy a fleet of sports cars. He didn't buy a private island. Instead, he looked around at the people who had helped him make the movie. He saw the makeup artist, the stunt drivers, the set builders, and the costume designers. He knew that while he was going to be set for life, many of them were living paycheck to paycheck. He knew that without their talent and their hard work, the movie would have been nothing. So he took that massive profit check and he gave it away. He created a trust fund, essentially, and he gifted millions of dollars to the special effects and costume design teams. We aren't talking about a few $100s as a tip. We are talking about life-changing money. Money that could buy a house, pay for a child's college education, or secure a retirement. This is practically unheard of in Hollywood. Usually, the big star takes the money and runs. The crew gets a t-shirt and a pizza party at the end of the shoot, but he decided that the wealth should be shared. He treated them like partners, not like employees. He looked at the people holding the lights and the people painting the backgrounds and said, "We did this together. You deserve this just as much as I do." The reaction from the industry was a mix of confusion and awe. The executives couldn't understand it. They asked their lawyers, why would he do that? It doesn't make financial sense. But that is the point. It doesn't make financial sense on paper. It makes human sense in the heart. He understands that money is just a tool. It is energy. And if you have more than you need, the only logical thing to do is to help the people around you. This act of generosity sent a ripple through the town. Crew members who worked on that movie still talk about it decades later. It changed their lives. It changed how they viewed their own worth. And it set a standard that very few other stars have been brave enough to follow. It exposed the selfishness of the system. When one man gives away millions to the crew, it makes the other stars who demand millions just for themselves look petty and small. It is a form of rebellion. You might think rebellion is about fighting or yelling, but sometimes the loudest rebellion is quietly writing a check to the people who deserve it. It is saying no to the idea that one person is worth 1,000 times more than another. It is using the capitalist system to break the cycle of greed. He took the machine's money and gave it back to the people who fuel the machine. This wasn't a publicity stunt. There were no cameras present when he signed those checks. He didn't hold a press conference to announce how generous he was being. In fact, most of the world only found out about it years later when the crew members told their stories to the press. He did it in the dark where no one could see. That is the purest form of kindness. It is doing the right thing when absolutely no one is watching. Imagine being one of those special effects artists. You spend months staring at a computer screen, perfecting a single shot. You are exhausted. Your back hurts. You think that the star on the poster doesn't even know your name. And then one day you find out that he gave you $1 million because he appreciated your work. How would that make you feel? It wouldn't just make you rich. It would make you feel seen. It would make you feel like a human being. This is the deal with the devil that he refused. The devil of Hollywood offers you fame and fortune, but the price is your soul. You have to become greedy. You have to stop caring about others. He took the fortune, but he kept his soul. And then he used the fortune to bless the souls of the people who worked alongside him. It sets the stage for what was coming next. Because once you have established that you are the kind of guy who gives away millions to the crew, you stop being just a movie star. You become something else. You become a leader. You become a symbol of what is possible when you refuse to let the world turn your heart into stone. And as he moved into the next chapter of his life, this reputation would follow him, creating a legacy that is far more valuable than any box office record. Time moves differently in Hollywood. One minute you are the biggest thing on the planet, and the next minute, people are wondering if you are still acting. For a long time, the industry had this quiet rule that once an action star hits a certain age, they are supposed to slow down. They are supposed to start playing the dad. The character who sits in a chair and gives advice to the young, handsome hero while the bad guys blow things up in the background. They're supposed to hand over the gun and pick up a pipe, but this man never got the memo. Or maybe he just read it and tore it up. Just when people thought they had him figured out as the sad, nice guy, he exploded back onto the screen with a level of energy that honestly shouldn't be possible for someone his age. We are talking about a time when most people his age are thinking about retirement or playing golf. Instead, he decided to become an assassin again. Not just any assassin, but a legendary character, known for killing people with a pencil. The shock of seeing him in these new movies wasn't just the plot. It was the sheer physical reality of it. In an era where movies are mostly computer-generated images, where green screens and digital doubles do all the hard work, he refused to cheat. He decided that if the audience was going to pay to see him fight, he was actually going to fight. Imagine the training required for this. We aren't talking about jogging a few miles a week. We are talking about hours and hours of judo, shujitsu, and tactical shooting training. He had to learn how to drive cars like a stuntman, sliding around corners at high speeds. He had to take hits. And believe me, he did take hits. When you watch those movies, when you see him get punched or thrown through a glass table, that is really him. He is getting battered and bruised. His knees must ache, his back must be sore, and he probably goes home at the end of the day icing injuries that would put a normal person in the hospital. Why would he do this? He has more money than he could ever spend. He doesn't need to prove he is tough. He doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, but he does it out of respect. He respects the audience. He feels that if people are going to give their time and money to watch his movie, he owes them the truth. He doesn't want a digital double to do the work. He wants to look them in the eye and say, "I did this for you." This level of dedication sent a shockwave through the industry. Younger actors half his age were struggling to keep up. These are guys who are famous for being in shape, guys who live in the gym and post their workouts on social media every day. But on set, they were the ones gasping for air while he was ready to do another take. It became a silent lesson in work ethic. He didn't stand on a box and yell at people to work harder. He just worked harder than everyone else, leading by example, but the physical side was only half the story. The other half was how he acted when the cameras stopped rolling. This is where the real shock comes in. On these big-budget action sets, the star is usually the most isolated person. They have a tent where only certain people can enter. They have chefs cooking special meals just for them. They are separated from the workers by a wall of security. On his sets, the walls came down. There is a story that spread like wildfire from the crew of one of these movies. It was a cold, rainy morning. The crew was standing around, shivering, waiting for the setup to be ready. They were tired, wet, and miserable. Suddenly, food trucks started arriving. Not just a sandwich cart, but full breakfast trucks. Tacos, coffee, pastries enough to feed an army. Who ordered it? It wasn't the producer. It was the star of the movie. He had noticed the crew was cold and hungry, so he paid for breakfast for everyone. He didn't make a big announcement. He didn't wait for a thank you. He just fed them. And he didn't eat separately. He stood in the line with them. He grabbed a plate and sat on a crate in the mud, eating next to the people who were moving the cables. He learned the names of the stunt drivers. He shook hands with the people sweeping the floor. He treated the person holding the microphone boom with the same importance as the director. This creates an atmosphere that you can't fake. When the boss is humble, everyone else feels safe to do their best work. It becomes a family, not a factory. This behavior is confusing to the modern generation of influencers who have taken over Hollywood. You know the type? They are famous for being famous. They walk around with an entourage of people who tell them how amazing they are. They treat the crew like furniture. They are on their phones, recording themselves for TikTok while the crew is working around them. They are demanding, rude, and entitled. They think the world revolves around them. When you put that type of person next to this man, the difference is blinding. It is embarrassing for the young stars. It shows them exactly what they are lacking. You can have millions of followers, but if the guy who brings you your coffee hates your guts, you aren't a star. You are just a popular person. Real leadership is making the people around you feel valued. He also came back to the franchise that made him a legend, the one with the virtual reality. He returned to make another sequel decades later. Everyone was skeptical. Hollywood ruins classics with bad sequels all the time. But he did it again. He did it to honor the fans who kept the story alive for 20 years. He did it to work with his friends again. During the filming of this sequel, he was once again the anchor. He was the one keeping the spirits up when the days got long. He was the one making sure that the new, younger actors felt welcome. He didn't act like the old master. He acted like a student who was eager to learn. He listened. He collaborated. He didn't throw his weight around. This is the shocking thing the title promised. The future of Hollywood is supposed to be about technology, about AI, about virtual worlds. But this man proved that the future is actually human. The success of his movies proved that people are starving for something real. They are tired of the fake, the polished, and the arrogant. They want to see someone who bleeds, sweats, and cares. He is forcing a change just by being there. He is showing the studios that you don't need to cast a rude, toxic jerk to sell tickets. You can cast a decent human being. You can cast someone who buys lunch for the crew. In fact, the movie might make more money because people love the actor. They want to support him because they know he is one of the good guys. We are witnessing a renaissance in his career, but it is a renaissance of the soul. He isn't just playing action heroes. He is playing the role of a lifetime himself. He is showing us that you can stay strong, stay sharp, and stay kind, even after decades in a business that tries to crush all of those things. And as he prepares for the next chapter, as he looks toward what is coming next, the industry is watching. They are learning that kindness is not weakness. It is a superpower. And it is a superpower that is about to change everything. When we look back at the history of the movies, when we think about the greats who have walked through the streets of Hollywood, we usually measure them by their trophies. We count the gold statues they have on their shelves. We count the billions of dollars their movies made. We remember the big scenes, the famous catchphrases, and the red carpet photos. But the truly shocking thing about this man, the thing that history will remember long after the movies have faded, is that his legacy isn't made of gold or film. It is made of moments. As we reach the end of this story, we have to ask ourselves, what is actually coming next? The title promised us that something shocking was coming to Hollywood. We might expect it to be a new technology or a new kind of special effect that blows our minds. But the real shock is something much quieter and much more powerful. The shock is that this man has proven, without a doubt, that you don't have to be cruel to be strong. You don't have to be selfish to be successful. He has broken the algorithm that runs the entertainment industry. For years, Hollywood has operated on the belief that controversy sells. They think that to get people to look at you, you have to be loud. You have to be outrageous. You have to be a villain. But he has shown the opposite. He has become the most beloved person on the planet by simply being a good human being. And this is sending a signal to the rest of the industry. The younger generation of actors is watching him. They are seeing that you don't need to be a diva to be a star. You can be kind. You can be humble. And people will love you even more for it. This is the ripple effect. He is changing the culture just by existing in it. When a young actor sees him standing in the lunch line with the crew, it makes that young actor think twice about demanding a private trailer. When a producer sees him giving away his salary to the crew, it shamans them into treating their own workers better. He is raising the bar. He is showing that excellence isn't just about what you do on screen. It is about who you are when the camera is off, but perhaps the most shocking part of his legacy is what he does when no one is watching at all. We have talked about his movies and his co-workers, but there is another side to his generosity that is even more hidden. It is one thing to be nice to the people you work with. It is another thing entirely to spend your life helping strangers who will never be able to pay you back. He has a sister. It is well known that she has been fighting a serious illness for many years. While he was out making blockbusters and saving the world on screen, he was quietly fighting to save her in real life. He didn't just write a check and forget about it. He became her anchor. He started a private foundation to help fund research for her disease. He didn't put his name on the building. He didn't hold galas with champagne and red carpets to pat himself on the back. He did it in silence. He poured millions of dollars into helping her and others like her, asking for absolutely nothing in return. There is also the story of the Children's Hospital. He has visited sick children in hospitals for decades, bringing toys and sitting with them, playing video games, and just listening to them. He doesn't bring the news crews. He doesn't post the photos on social media to show the world what a saint he is. He goes there because he knows that those kids are in pain, and if he can make them smile for 5 minutes, it is worth more than any award. A few years ago, it was revealed that he had donated a massive portion of his earnings from one of his big action franchises to a children's cancer charity. The people at the charity were stunned. They said he didn't want a press release. He didn't want a plaque. He just handed over the money and said, "Do good with it." Can you imagine that level of humility? In a world where people donate money just to get their name in the newspaper, he donates money and actively tries to keep his name out of it. This is the true definition of character. Character is what you do when you think no one is finding out. It is easy to be nice when the cameras are rolling and the applause is loud. It is very hard to be nice in the dark in a hospital room with no witnesses. That is where he lives. So, what is coming in Hollywood? The future is a return to humanity. Because of him, people are starting to realize that we are hungry for realness. We are tired of the fake. We are tired of the influencers and the arrogance. We want to see people who care. We want to support artists who see us, the audience, as human beings, not just ticket buyers. When you look at him today, he still looks like that lonely guy on the bench. He still wears his old boots and his leather jacket. He still rides his motorcycle through the city, dodging the paparazzi, just wanting to feel the wind on his face. He doesn't live in a fortress. He lives in a modest apartment. He doesn't own a collection of supercars. He drives a regular car. He has realized what most people spend their whole lives trying to figure out. Stuff doesn't make you happy. Connection makes you happy. Kindness makes you happy. Doing the right thing makes you happy. He has survived the darkest tragedies and the blinding spotlight of fame, and he has come out the other side not as a monster but as a gentle soul. That is the miracle. That is the story that will shock people for generations to come. It proves that the system doesn't always have to break you. You can walk through the fire and come out kind. As he rides off into the sunset of his career, or whatever comes next for him, he leaves behind a trail of inspired people. He leaves behind crew members who can afford to retire. He leaves behind sick children who have hope. He leaves behind fans who feel a little less alone in the world because they know that somewhere out there, the guy from the movies is just a regular guy trying to do his best. The machine of Hollywood will keep turning. It will try to find the next big thing. It will try to create new stars. But they will never be able to manufacture what he has. They can write scripts and build sets, but they cannot program a heart. They cannot fake the kind of goodness that comes from suffering and healing. In the end, the shock isn't that he is a nice guy. The shock is that he is real. And in a world of illusions, being real is the most powerful thing you can be. So, the next time you see a headline about some celebrity scandal, just remember this story. Remember the man who gave away millions, who ate sandwiches on a bench, and who carried the weight of the world with a smile. He showed us the way. He showed us that you don't have to be famous to be a hero. You just have to be kind. And that is a lesson that Hollywood and the rest of us will never forget.